So here to help us break it all down, Colin Langan is Wells Fargo's auto and mobility analyst, has an underweight rating on Tesla and a $120 price target. And that's been the right call to have had this year, Colin. But before we get to Tesla, just give me a quick read on GM and your thoughts about what obviously seems to be quite strong numbers, particularly in North America.
Yeah, sure. I mean, GM had a very good quarter. I mean, they reported $3.8 billion in adjusted EBIT, better than consensus of $3 billion. I think, volume seemed to have come in better. It was probably the most notable factor. And pricing for them has held in pretty well, which seems to be bucking the trend from some of the data that we see for the industry. That said, I think inventory levels look a little bit high. Full-size pickups demand for the industry is a bit weak in Q1, and that's a huge moneymaker. So those are factors that, probably mean some risk for the rest of the year, in my opinion. And then in general, I'm cautious on all the Detroit 3 automakers. I mean, I think we see pricing headwinds, EV headwinds as those ramp because of the regulations and the unprofitability there. And then, we are concerned and watching closely the full-size pickup segment since it's such a moneymaker for the Detroit 3.
Well, your concern obviously also extends to Tesla, where, as we said, you have not been particularly aggressive on the stock at all. Has it already discounted to a certain extent, given that 40% move down this year, or 41%, the expectations coming into this quarter, Colin?
I think it's a good question because I think almost every investor I've spoken to really expects a miss in the quarter. I would tend to agree. I think the fundamentals are very poor in Q1. I think what I've warned investors about in the very short term on the call is that they do have a history of razzle-dazzling investors, right? I mean, they're probably going to hype up full self-driving and robo-taxi. And, it can dislocate from fundamentals. I think after the call, after the excitement that might be building on low expectations heading in, I think the fundamentals matter again. I think you'll have pretty weak deliveries, price cuts, and I think the question of when will robo-taxi actually hit becomes an important concern.
What is that razzle-dazzle? Is it enough to razzle-dazzle at this point, so to speak? Because we've heard promises on robo-taxis and full self-driving for some time. To be fair, they do have a new iteration of it that relies, on sort of a different underlying, neural networks in a way that they hadn't previously. But is it going to be enough in neural nets in this case to really get people excited, given what we've seen in the past?
I guess to be clear, I think, there's a risk that there's some short-term excitement. We saw very poor Q1 deliveries. The stock fell and then traded back up. So we've seen a dislocation in the very recent near term from fundamentals. We saw news about Model 2, which was an important launch, and questions about what the outlook for that model is. And we saw the stock actually, trade back up after that. So it can dislocate from fundamentals. But then we saw, like in the last week, the fundamentals do ultimately matter. And I do think there's some expectation here. They have it's a new system. I've actually been in it. It is significantly improved. It's pretty impressive for how long it's been out. And I'm sure they're going to be hyping the exponential rate of change of improvements of that system. I still fundamentally don't see it being a robo-taxi anytime soon. And I think there's a lot of work to be done. But I think they're going to probably be talking about the rate of change there and how, building excitement about maybe that coming sooner than people are expecting. And that might be enough to get, the people who are bullish on the stock to buy more.
Based on your, Colin, I'm just curious, based on your experience covering the stock, what is it that kind of shifts investor focus from the fundamentals to what you described to be, razzle-dazzle, hype, and so forth? What is it that the average person can be looking for on the call that would suggest that a shift like that is taking place and they should be kind of mindful in how they're trading the stock today and tomorrow?
I mean, to be very clear, I'm just talking tonight, post-earnings, the reaction, I could see a risk that it pops. I still think the fundamentals matter, and we've seen the fundamentals seem to overweigh that over time. And I think over the month and the month after, we're going to see the fundamentals matter. I do think, people are clearly looking at the long-term story. If you're a buyer of the stock, you're looking at the robo-taxi and the market opportunity there. And considering the low expectations that investors have into the quarter, I don't know that the setup in the very short term is great for the bears. I think fundamentally when deliveries come in, price cuts continue, then I think the story works again.